Now, I'm sure you've seen a lot of videos like this in recent times where they just attacked the Harley movie because they didn't think it was that good a movie. I don't want to do that today. What I want to do is look at an example of how I think Warner Brothers massively messed up. We've recently had two versions of Harley presented to us. We've had the version that we've seen in Suicide Squad that went on to be in the Birds of Prey movie, and we have DC's very own version of Harley Quinn in the Harley Quinn animated series. That series wrapped up on the 14th of February and had been released since about October on a weekly basis. What I think is really incredible to me is the fact that the cartoon version serves as a better storyline that would have worked to a mass audience, yet they decided to put it in a really niche place and go ahead with a movie that they just decided to make. Ultimately, I think the biggest problem with Birds of Prey is that it was a movie that didn't need to be made. Now, in Harley Quinn, the movie, what we see happen is Harley just goes through a chain of events that ultimately means she ends up with a little ragtag team of heroes that just so happen to all be female by the end of it. I'm not gonna dress it up. That is essentially the story they wanted to house. They wanted to put together their own sort of version of a female Justice League, but with an anti-hero kind of twist. I think the thing that goes wrong with just making a movie for the sake of it is when we're in a place where comic book fatigue is so heavy and you don't really have such a solid storyline. Like, that as a storyline could apply to anyone. Harley Quinn is one of the most interesting characters that DC has ever used because she in herself is such a complex mind. You decided to make this a little bit of a more mature rated movie, which means you can talk about adult themes. And that's something that is not held back in the Harley Quinn cartoon. That's the approach they wanted to go with this movie. The movie approach, they wanted something as outrageous as Deadpool, but with someone like Harley, almost like a female flip. So what we had was one story that was just designed to house a movie for the sake of trying to get people on board, and the other one was a really good story. The differences in the story go like this. Harley finds herself in Arkham. That is where we should have found Harley in the start of this movie, but she's just like, oh, I got out of that. In the cartoon, she has to break out. That would have been a great first 30 minutes for the movie. She has to get out of Arkham, but she doesn't really want to do that. She's hoping that Joker will come and find her, and obviously Joker's not going to come and find her. What I like about this is because we're in Arkham, we get to see some very familiar faces. I cannot for the life of me understand why Birds of Prey decided to go with such a weird supporting cast when you could have had the likes of Catwoman. Even though they're using Catwoman in Batman, you could have had a version of Catwoman, and you could have used Poison Ivy. Two very recognizable faces when it comes to the movie franchise and just generally being associated with Harley Quinn or the Batman franchise. But instead, they chose to go with a bunch of supporting characters that wouldn't have any pull as far as people are looking into the movie and thinking, oh, what's going to be good about this? Now, that's not taking away anything from the performances that were put across. I'm just saying, in the version in the cartoon, she has to escape Arkham, and therefore she meets Ivy, and you realise that Ivy has a massive love for her because when Ivy was in Arkham and Harley was still a psychiatrist, she was one of her patients. So Ivy feels like Harley really helped her out. So she wants to help her out with getting over the Joker. And it's funny because you see all of these other characters, like, you know, classic people like the Riddler being like, he doesn't love you, etc., etc., and she can't accept it. So Ivy breaks her out of jail and they get out. Ivy lets her stay at her place. Already we have a great storyline here going on. Obviously, the Joker hears about this, but he doesn't really seem to care. I'm not saying we needed a Harley movie that focused around Joker, but you need to reference him, and they did that anyway. He was still part of the storyline regardless, right? You know, you have all of these massive names that you can play with in a franchise, and you choose to go with the ones that you think are a bit left-wing and stuff that you can have fun with and try and make into popular characters. I understand from a movie-making standpoint, or like, you know, a production standpoint, someone in that room is going to say, look at Marvel, they've taken some of their more B-list names or C-list names and made them really popular. We can do the same things using one of our A-list names and bringing in more supporting cast. No, the beauty of having someone like Ivy that's known Harley for so long is there's a built-up level of friendship there. We didn't spend the whole movie getting the band together for a sequel that's likely not going to happen because it bombed in the box office. No, what we got was the start of a great story. Now, Harley at this point in the cartoon, and this is still just episode 1, let's remind you this. I'm not doing the whole series because I think it would be unfair to judge an entire series against a movie because they have a lot more room to do stuff. But within the first 2 episodes compared to the movie, we have a better version of the Harley Quinn movie they should have delivered. And guess what? They did it under the right way by just naming it Harley Quinn the series. That's how they should have approached the movie. It's funny because they use similar animations in the start of the Harley movie, but the whole thing and the way that it's delivered is so deadpan and not interesting compared to the first 5 seconds or whatever of the cartoon version. Cross studios and make something work there. What we see play out in the cartoon is Ivy's trying to help Harley get over the Joker. She actually goes to the Joker and says, that's it, I'm done with you, so on and so forth. And the Joker's like, no, this was part of my plan. You know, gets her back on side yet again. And Ivy's just like, I cannot actually believe you're falling for this. So the Riddler puts together a massive riddle that puts both Harley and Batman in danger, and the Joker has to actually decide who he wants to save out of the 2, but he chooses Batman because he's in love with Batman. Of course he is. And this ultimately makes Harley realize that she's nothing in Joker's eyes, and she falls into a vat of acid, you know, similar to like how she was born, but this is how she's gonna go out. Batman is of course freed, and he goes to chase down the Joker. Harley isn't actually in acid, she gets pulled out, and it just so happens that Ivy, using her favor from Riddler, because she also broke out the Riddler when she broke them out earlier, put together this whole situation just to help out her best friend, right, and say you don't need this guy in your life. And then she realizes that Joker's obviously not a good guy, and not good for her, so she goes back to Ace Chemicals, fucks the place up, fucks him up, destroys it all, and is just like, yo, Ivy, I'm gonna go take this town over, what are you saying? And she's like, I'm not really down for that, I'm just about the plants, but if you want to crash at my place, that's cool. And that's it. That would have easily set up a sequel and no one would be mad at that. You're like, oh, the Joker's gonna come back and try to get her, how's this gonna play out, etc, etc. I don't know about you, but that already just seems like a much more fun storyline and approach. It already involves way more characters. You're going to be like, oh, I'm actually going to go and watch this. It doesn't just say, hey, this is a movie called Birds of Prey and it's got Harley Quinn in it, right? No. That was one of the worst ways they could have ever put it across. This show just says, you know what? We're part of the Batman franchise, and we're just going to live up to it. There's so much great moments in it. Like, where else are you going to see Jim Gordon like this?
Jim, what's wrong?
It's Barb. You know, she's sleeping with someone else, and the worst part, I can't blame her.
Or Bane like this.
Look, I'm stomping on your face! Stop it!
Bane, stop it!
Where can you see someone call Wonder Woman And that's what I'm saying. I feel like Warner Brothers got cold feet about this movie midway through production and just said, you know what, we're going to call it Birds of Prey. We need to get this out. We need to get the contracts done. We need to close the door on this story. People like Harley, maybe it will make us some money. But what they should have done is looked at the 2 scripts when presented with them and went, these first 2 episodes make an amazing storyline. If we print this, we're printing money. And guess what? The cartoon doesn't hypersexualize Harley or do anything like that. It still portrays men in a way that's vile, but also in a way that's completely unaware and hilarious at times, but also you're like, what a douchebag, etc, etc. Everything they wanted to tackle and get across in that movie, they had already done better in the cartoon version that was running at a similar time. So I can't understand why they made those choices. Hopefully now you go and watch the Harley cartoon if you haven't. I waited for it to all come out so I could binge it in one day because that's how I like to do things. It's a really great watch. If you're a massive fan of Batman the Brave and Bold, which is one of my favorite series ever, then go and check it out. It has an incredible voice cast, like just incredible. The animation's great. And I'm not taking anything away from the delivery on the Harley Quinn movie. Overall, it looked really good, and for what it was, no one actually stepped a foot out of place or anything like that, and there was some good performances. The problem was, the approach to the movie just wasn't what any sort of mass audience would really want. They don't need to get in the band together sort of movie for people they're not interested in. If you're making a Harley Quinn movie, make it really about Harley Quinn and her story. And what I liked about the approach, like I said in the cartoon, is that they went from her being in Arkham, her effects as a psychiatrist on people, her effects of her her trying to get over the Joker, not relying on him and saying, oh no, what's going to happen if I step away from him? Her still being in love with him, but trying to combat that, and finally seeing that he doesn't actually care, and that she has some people around her that care. There's a beautiful moment even later on in the series. I don't want to ruin too much for you, but basically a similar thing happens with Joker again, and she happens to land on the front face of the Batwing as it's flying, and even Batman's just like empathizing with her at that point, and there's a little bit like,
some things never change, Quinn.
and that's what I mean. Those little moments would have been great for the Harley Quinn movie, given, look, DC and Warner Brothers are at a point where they clearly don't care and will make whatever they want. Joker's proven that. So they should have just went big with it and done it really, really well. That's just my opinion. Like I said, go watch the Harley Quinn series. You won't regret it. It's great. It's somewhere in between a classic, like, it's somewhere in between Brave and Bold and then the level of, like, no restraint that Rick and Morty or South Park or Family Guy have. So in between all of that, there's something beautiful, and it's done really well. Enjoy your days. Take care of yourselves. Peace out. Like, share, subscribe, all of that stuff.